Joining us today via Skype is Harvard Law professor John Zittrain, whose specialty is internet law. And of course, he's been tracking the fallout of the Google and China story. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Thanks for having me.
Has Google effectively lost the Chinese market?
Well, the steps Google is taking and the kinds of communications Google has had with the Chinese government are kind of taking the playbook that you would normally have for how to interact with the Chinese government and dousing it with gasoline and setting it on fire in a way that turns it into plasma. So in that sense, it is a strategy not well designed to maintain a presence in the Chinese market. My sense is Google, that's not their goal. So they're okay with that. Now, there is some sense that they might be trying to peel off some of their operations that don't involve serving up web search, for which self-censorship has been required traditionally, and trying to keep it in China. They're at least waiting for China to say, we revoke your license and get out. And we'll see if China takes that step. I don't think they have yet.
So then what presence can Google have in this market, though, if they're going to start peeling off these different applications and services then? I mean, China, of course, represents a major market for them in the future, just as with any other company. So what do they do from here?
Well, if you're looking at it purely from just the business lens, which, again, I'm not sure that's really Google's principal lens right now. But you could look at it as the way in which a company that is a search engine makes money in China is first to be a search engine that Chinese citizens use, and every so often they click on AdWords that are adjacent to the search results. That may be harder to pull off now that Google.cn has been moved to Google.com.hk because it may be harder to have a sales force in China knocking on doors, virtually speaking, or maybe literally, that's saying, hey, wouldn't you like to have AdWords next to our search results? But there may be money that they are still making in China, any search engine, including Google, where when somebody uses Google.com here in America, a Chinese company has placed an ad. So when you do a search on Chinese tourism, cherry blossoms or whatever, something comes up called, hey, visit China, use this travel agent, and that might be a Chinese firm. And when you click on the ad, the Chinese firm pays Google money for the referral. And that sort of thing may still remain. And so long as Americans, say, can still get to Google.com and do searches related to China, that cash flow may not go away.
So, of course, this has major implications for Google as a business going forward, but what about the broader implications? Could this spill over to other corporate relations in China? Do you see this as perhaps a sign that other Western companies perhaps will follow Google's lead?
If you are not Google, if you're another company watching this, chances are good that you're basically either on the sidelines or hiding under a pile of blankets waiting for it to go away. It's already difficult enough to do business in China, you might reason, with less than the full rule of law. You get a promise from somebody that somebody else in the government doesn't back up. You thought you had your license squared away. Now it's not. You're supposed to be doing business with some firm that you didn't even realize was the favored firm. There's all sorts of trickiness to doing business in China. This makes it that much more complicated.
There's so many different avenues where this story can go, but what is your bold prediction then when it comes to China and Google or with other internet companies in the near term?
Well, in the near term, I think we're not necessarily going to see a stampede of companies looking to identify themselves with Google. And it's because, in part, nobody wants to have a target painted on his or her back. My sense from reading both the original blog post posted by their general counsel, David Drummond, and by the follow-up post he just put up, is that they are just, mad and they're not going to take it anymore. That they felt, basically, this is my inference now, that they had a deal with China that was already in a moral minefield. They had gone as far as they were willing to go, and at times possibly a little more, into an arrangement by which they could operate their search engine in China and do so with permission of the government. And that included self-censorship, and it also included some contingencies that under these particular circumstances, whatever they may be, I don't know what the agreement is, when the Chinese government wants to know the identity of a Google user, under these particular circumstances, Google will turn it over, and under these other circumstances, they will not. And my sense as to why the original blog post referenced the hacking and the cybersecurity issues and then segued into, and that's why we don't want to filter our search engine anymore, was basically a sense that China nailed this deal down and then didn't want to abide by it. If there was some information that the deal said they couldn't get, they tried to hack their way into getting it anyway. And at that point, my sense is Google says, to hell with this. If you're going to not hold up your end, why are we bothering to try to do this self-censorship thing? Now, over the medium or long term, it may well be, it depends, who knows. But just like Pravda was not the most credible newspaper the moment the Soviet Union fell, right? People knew they were not reading the actual unvarnished news. It may well be that the Google brand, over a longer term, should China experience a genuine liberalization through regime change or some other method, then you may find a number of people, particularly among, the intelligentsia, who will turn to Google as a reliable source of information, unlike the brands that they've been offered more front and center that have agreed to self-censor. That's one possible outcome.